episode number 19. Shalom, this is Rabbi Eliyahu Mitrov with this week's Talmud podcast. This week we'll be covering Metzia 34b. This is the second class. It says on the bottom of the Gemara in 34a in Metzia like this. Bashita, it's obvious. Amar eni mishalem, v'chozer amar hareni mishalem. It's obvious if a guy says, I don't want to pay, and then he's chozer and he says that he wants to pay, it's obvious that he's going to get the kefel. He will wind up as a shomer to receive the double payment that comes when the thief is caught. So that's obvious. Why? Because the last thing that he said was that he wants to pay. But here's the question, Eila, hareni mishalem. What if the guy first said hareni mishalem, and afterwards he was chozer and said, Eni mishalem, I don't want to pay. And then all of a sudden they found the ganav. Does he get the kefir or not? Mi amrinin mahadr kahadr bey. Do we say the guy retracted and he really doesn't want to pay? Or Dilma, milsakai b'dachiyahu. Maybe his words stand and he's just pushing for time. So that's the first question of the Gemara. Do we say that when a guy retracts and says, I don't want to pay, is he serious or not? The Gemara continues and says, what happens if a guy says, I want to pay, and then he dies? V'amru banav, and his children say, Ein anu mishalmim. We don't want to pay. Mai, what's the din? Rashi says, V'amru banim ein anu mishalim, lo speak l'shalem ad shemes. This guy did not have a chance to pay before he died. So he claimed he wanted to pay, which means he should get the kefel. Problem is that the children say they don't want to pay. So the question is, do they get the kefel or not? Mi amrinin mahadr kai mahadre. Boo. Do we say that they're serious and they really want to retract and they don't want to pay? Or Dilma, demil sadave hon kaima. Or no, the words of their father stands. But they're just pushing off for time themselves. So the same question now on the level of the sons. The father said he wants to pay and he obligates himself to pay. But he dies before he can pay. Then the children come along and say, no, we don't want to pay. Then what happens? Then they find the ganav, they find the thief. Who does the kefil go to? Do we take their word seriously or not? Comes along the Kosos who brings the Ma'arik, who wants to prove from our Gemara that children do not have to pay in such a case. He says like this, not only where the father himself wanted to take a shavua and he didn't want to pay, not only in that case do we say that the children don't have to pay, but even in a case where the father himself didn't want to take a shavua and he wanted to pay, still the children will be pater. They don't have to pay. Like we learned from our Gemara. That says, Hareni Mishalim v'meis. In the case where the father says he wants to pay, and then he dies. Hadre ke mahadre. Do we say that the children retract or no? Mashba behedia. We can infer from here that if the children say that they don't want to have pay, they don't have to pay. Even though their father said he wanted to pay. And koshikain, or the more so, if their father didn't want to pay, if their father didn't want to pay, and they don't want to pay either. But even in the case where the father wanted to pay, if he died before, they're not obligated to pay if they don't want to. And we're even talking about Shavua Shomrim, which is deraisa. In other words, the father had to take a Shavua deraisa. He didn't want to pay, and now he has to take a Shavua. What happened? He passed away. No, he can't take a Shavua. Now the children surely can't take a Shavua because they don't know what's flying. They don't know what happened. So still they don't have to pay. It's a tremendous chiddush. The father who had to take a shavua or pay, his children don't have to pay at all, even though there's no shavua. And surely in a case where the shavua is only the rabbanan, the children won't have to pay. And he says this is absolutely clear. But it's a tremendous chiddush because really the father, his only way out was through the shavua. Here it winds up that the kids can't take the shavua and still they don't have to pay. If the father was alive, if he didn't take a shavua, he'd have to pay. So we call that a chiyuv. He's obligated to pay. This chiyuv does not pass down to the children, even though they can't take a shavua. And the proof is from our Gemara, because our Gemara has a question. when they say that they don't want to pay, are they serious or not? On the side that they're serious, they don't have to pay. That seems to be simple Peshat in the Gemara. And he goes on to explain that it must be that the Marik holds like the Rush, who holds what? Hekidelo habi le'meida lo amrina matok. Where you're chasser information, you're lacking information. In other words, the children can't take a shavua because of the fact that they don't know. In such a case, we don't say matok. We don't say from the fact that you can't take the shavua, you have to pay. That applies to other cases where you can't take the shavua because the guy is a Russia or other reasons. But if the reason is because they're lacking information, no, they don't have to pay. So now comes along the Kosos Choshen, and he says that this proof is not mukhrach. We're not forced to say like this. There's another way to learn in Gemara, like we learned in the last year. Maybe the chazar that we're talking about is only related to the fact that they don't get the kefel. In other words, of course they have to pay. As soon as the father stands up in Beis Din and says, Hareini Mishalim, he has to pay. What does it mean we have a sveika? What if the father himself, for example, says, I don't want to pay? We want to know if he's serious or not in the relationship to whether he gets the kefir or not. But of course he has to pay. If that's true, the same thing by the children. Since the father says he has to pay in court, so now he's obligated to pay. Even if he dies, that chiyuv will fall to his children and his children will have to pay. The question will be in the Gemara, what about the children? Are they retracting or not? That's also related to the kefil. And therefore the Kosos says that the Marik's proof is not a proof. Since the whole question of the Gemara is whether there's going to be tircha or not. Are they going to force me to come to Beis Din or not? That's the question of the Gemara. But of course they have to pay. He says like this. Also it's true by the children. For sure they have to pay. Why? Because their father already said, already Mashalim, I'm going to pay. Rather, the question of the Gemara is just on the kefel. And if there's going to be tircha or not. So therefore, the proof is not a proof. And we can't learn from here that the children are obligated to pay. Now comes along the Kosos and brings the proof that surely they have to pay. He says, there's no way that we can say that these kids can back off and not pay. His proof is going to be by proving the opposite false. He says, if you'll say that really they could retract, upatir mishalem, and they don't have to pay at all, surely they're not going to get the kefil at all. There's no question as to whether they're going to get the kefil. Because if they don't have to pay, they don't get the kefil. Because not only do they not have to pay, but they don't have to take a shavua. And someone who doesn't have to take a shavua and doesn't have to pay never gets the kefil. He brings the shach who says like this, in a case where there would be witnesses that the shomer was onus, the ein sirik shavua, and therefore this shomer does not need a shavua. Lo magnet kafela. He doesn't get the kefel. Ayin sham. Ele peshuta davar the yorshim lo mati hadre. Surely these yorshim cannot retract and they have to pay. Ele di boy lemeshum the tircha lebeis dine. The whole question of the Gemara is like in the second Peshat of Tosfos that it must be talking about the kefel. I want to bring down the Rash, but the Shir Rebbe Shmuel brings down that says exactly like the Shach. It says, we're not talking about a case where there is Adam that is Posheya. Rather, we're talking about a case where that he doesn't have to pay at all. Lo tashlumi mamon, but lo tashlumi shavua. The Hechadami, for example, Kigon. If you have a case where there are witnesses, it's a shomer chinum, and the witnesses said, we know this thing was stolen. Or, for example, a shomer sachar, and there's Adam that it was onus, it got wiped away in a storm. The beki high in such a case, cave in the lecha aleim tashlumim klau, there's no tashlumim at all. Umafter pater and he's completely, absolutely exempt. Boy nifka shluma in such a case, if this guy wanted to pay, I don't know why he wanted to pay, but if he wanted to pay, it's like he sold him the kanas. It's not a din of kanas. The original owner never had in mind to give this guy the kefil. We learned earlier. How does the shomer get the kefil? He said, a minute before this thing gets stolen, I have in mind that you acquire this cow if you pay me, and you will wind up getting the kefel. That is my kavanah. That's my intention. But that doesn't apply to a case where the guy's pater legamre. What does he mean? He's trying to save himself a tirchet de beis din. He doesn't want to have to go to beis din and pull the money out of this guy. But if it's a case where there's Adam that he's pater, there's no going to beis din, there's nothing to talk about. So he never had in mind to give this guy the kefel. So now the Kosos is using this idea as a proof that in our Gemara, it must be that the Yorshim are chayiv to pay. Why? Because since the Yorshim, the children, don't have to take a Shavua because they can't take a Shavua, if it would be true they don't have to pay either, so of course they're not going to get the kefil. It's Peshita. What's the question here? They don't have to pay. They don't have to take a Shavua. In such a case, the original owner never had in mind to give them the kefil. So even if they pay, they're not paying for kefil. If they wind up with kefil, they're getting it as a matana. But it's not in the Shulchan Aruch of kefil. It's in the Shulchan Aruch of matanot, gifts. So that's the Kosos' proof that Peshat in our Gemara is not talking about a chazara where you go all the way and don't have to pay. No, it's only talking about a chazara that he has a tirchet de beis din, he doesn't want to pay, and therefore he's not going to get the kefil. But of course he has to pay, because he doesn't have to pay at all, and he doesn't have to take a shavua. Surely we never had a mind for him to get the kefil. That's the proof of the Kosos against the Ma'arik. Comes along the Shir de Rabbi Shmuel, and he wants to take the hechrak, the force, out of the Kosos' proof. He says like this: it's true that there is no chiyuv shavua on the Yorshim. They don't know what happened, so they can't take a shavua. Makom, nevertheless, Hari im emes haya davar shavim ashomer pasha v'nischayev areim chiyuvim. But if it happens to be that their father was really posheya, he was negligent, there really is a chiyuv. We can't pin it on them. Why? Because they don't have to take a shavua. But if their father really was negligent, so really they have to pay. But since they don't have a shavua, they're pater from paying. Since we don't know if their father was posheya or not. Their father, he had a possibility, either to pay or to take a shavua. Happens to be he passed away. But they don't have a shavua, and they don't have a chiyuv on them, so they don't have to pay. Aval makom, im ba'al l'shalem, yesh makom l'tashlumim. Shikshavu tashlumim ashmira. Still, it's true, even if you'll say they don't have to pay, if they were to pay, we can still say it's a possibility that they're paying for the chiyuv of their father, and therefore there will be kefil. And it's not comparable to a case where there's really Adam. There's Adam, for example, that it was stolen. In such a case where there's Adam that it was stolen, we never had in mind to give this guy the kefil. But in a case where the father was potentially posheya, and then the father passed away, now when the children pay, maybe we did have in mind. Why? Because maybe they're paying for the chiyuv of their father. And therefore, our case in our Gemara is not comparable to the case of the Rashba. And he says it's comparable. Dumia, the nishba v'achak shilem, kedeis Baba Kama. We learned in Baba Kama on 108a, we learned this before. There's a question. V'nishba v'shalem. What happens in a crazy case where a guy took a shavua and then he wants to pay anyway? Does he get the kefir or not? Abaya says he doesn't get the kefir, but Rava says he does get the kefir. So how can it be that he gets the kefil? If we'll say that when he took a shavua, he's absolutely pater, so that's it. He's out of the box of getting the kefil. It's finished. It's a done deal. No, we see that even if a guy takes a shavua and he pays later, the payment can still be considered a payment for the lost animal, and therefore he'll acquire the kefil. Will still be in the Shulchan Aruch of kefil. So too the same thing here. When the children pay, it's possible that their father was Poshea, and they're paying that payment, and therefore they will get the kefil. And it's not comparable to the case that the Rashba brought down, where if there really was Adam that he was honest, for example, so that's it. It's a done deal. There's no chiyuv at all. There's no chiyuv to pay for. And therefore he says, V'lo dami levo Adam shenenasa de paturi b'vadai u'matana ba'almahu. And it's not comparable to the case where there is Adam that he's pater. In such a case, that's only a matana. The payment itself is only a matana. The kefil in the other direction is only a matana. And we're no longer in the parsha of kefil. And therefore, there's no comparison between the two cases, because when the children pay, it's possible that they're actually paying for a chiyuv that exists. Masha'en kain, which is not true. When there's Adam, if a person pays, he's just paying as a matana. And therefore, we're no longer in the world of kefil. And it comes out, according to the Shir of Rabbi Shmuel, that the Kosos' proof against the Marik doesn't hold water. Okay, that's it for this week's podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Please look below this video for the PDF with all the source files that will help you to understand this class.